everybody, it's Sharon here. Welcome back to my channel for those who are returning, and welcome to any new subscribers that may be visiting for the first time. I'm going to do my own take on the Glassine bag. So I have one here that I've created in the past as a template, and I'm using some tea stain baking paper. So I'll show you what the baking paper looks like when it's purchased. This is the baking paper that I use, and I use this when I'm tea staining. So I just picked it up in my local supermarket, and when I do my tea staining, I actually take my sheet of baking paper to line my tray that I put my papers on, and when I cut my baking paper, I scrunch it up into a ball, and I actually do that a couple of times before I lay it down on my tray. Now, the reason I started doing that was because I actually saw somewhere that you should do that with baking paper when you're baking, because it stops it from curling. Now, I'm not going to say that it does or doesn't work very well, but it does give the baking paper a really lovely aged look. And when I'm doing tea staining, I do multiple rounds, so I'm not just popping my papers over one sheet of baking paper, popping it in the oven, and then that's all I do. I will pop a layer over, cook it in the oven, or dry it in the oven, sorry, and pull it out, take those sheets off, and then I'll put my next round on. So I end up with all manner of different colours and shades and textures to my baking paper. Some of them come out more spotted like this does, and some come out quite yellowish and with very few spots on them. So it really is the luck of the draw, but I love using it in my crafting. So as well as keeping the tea stain paper, I get to keep the baking paper, and I love that. Waste not, want not. So I have quite a large sheet here. I do have really large baking trays when I'm doing my tea staining, and I'm going to cut it down. I'm just trying to do it without hitting the camera. So I want 2 pieces at 5 inches. I may even do 3 while I'm at it. And I have found with this paper cutter that sometimes, and I'm hoping you can see what I'm doing without that. No. Okay. So sometimes with this paper cutter, I'm better off to take it to the center and pierce the paper in the center before I start cutting. And for delicate papers like baking paper, that is my preferred method, rather than trying to push against the edge of the paper. I find I end up with more shredding that way than I do actual cutting. And I'm sure you all have your own tricks for your own paper cutters. That just seems to be what works for me with this one. Now, I don't really want to take it from that fold, so I'm going to cut that fold off. Now, I use this baking paper for all manner of things in my crafting, and I do find it really great to collage with, depending on what I'm doing, and I will end up with whatever is behind where I put the baking paper will come through a little bit. So it's fabulous over book paper and music paper and that sort of thing. So that piece will go toward my collage papers. It won't be wasted, that's for sure. Oh, and sorry, I was going to pack my paper cutter up and realised that, oh, I wasn't done. So that's 5, and then I want to cut at about 7 1/4. Now, this is just what I've worked out for my little bags, and you can certainly work out your own measurements by all means. So I'm just going with what I had as my template. And again, these little pieces will come in handy for all sorts of things, so I won't throw those away. So So 7 1/4. Popping those to the side. And that's all I need my paper cutter for at this stage. And then I have my scoreboard. So taking the long edge and popping that against my scoreboard, against the left hand side, I'm going to score at 3/4 of an inch. And you do need to be quite careful when scoring this paper because it shifts. So I'm holding it on this side once I get down a little bit, just to stop it from moving. It kind of buckles on itself. And then I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to score at 2 inches. And again, I'm trying to hold both sides of the paper. And I'm not pushing overly hard because the paper is quite delicate. And 5 3/8. And I'm hoping this will work. And I think we'll do 1 and test it out because I haven't made these for a little while. So before we move on to the others, and just checking my template to make sure I'm on track. Yes, I am. So I'm taking out, and I'm hoping you can see the score line. They are not overly easy to see, but if you work on it reasonably quickly, you will see what you're doing. So I'm just going to cut that, and I'm going to cut that at an angle. And then again on this side, taking those edges off, and I'm trying to stick to the top of the score line as much as possible. Okay, probably didn't quite angle that enough. And then folding these over, as I said, it has been a little while since I made one of these. I usually have them, a few made up in my stash, and I haven't got any at the moment. So, and that gives us a nice join there. I don't know if you can see, ready for gluing. Okay. So the other thing I need are my pinking shears, and I am using, they're quite heavy duty pinking shears, but I love them. I do need to tidy this up a little bit. I have got a little bit of an edge there that I'd like to get rid of. Okay, so I'm just going to edge the top, and you can take off as much or as little as you'd like. I'm going to flip that over and use that as a guide for the other side. Okay, and then with my pinking shears, I'm just going to take off the very edge. So, not diving into it too far. And when I'm cutting, I'm holding the scissors on my fingers just to keep them steady, stop them from slipping around. Then I'm going to do the same across the top. So again, I'll see if I can do this a bit closer to. I'm trying to look around the camera so I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay. And then once we glue, and some people may decide to take the bottom off. I actually like to leave both edges the same size, so I'm not going to take those off, but I'm using my quick dry adhesive, and I have done this before and it's worked quite well. So I'm sticking with what I know. I do have some paper towel here, and what I have done in the past is I have folded this up to sit inside my little pocket, little bag. Oops. Little string of thread there from my sewing machine. I collect them. So they're just sitting on my table. I'm not sure, I think I've folded this a little bit too big actually. Oh, I'm suddenly getting really, really hungry. Okay, what I might do is just take one of these. I just want to stop any glue seepage. So you can use paper towel, you can use a piece of paper. You can not put anything in there, it's entirely up to you. I just want to make sure that I don't stick to the bag itself. So, okay, that should work quite well. Okay, and taking my quick dry. So here is my marker here. I'm kind of eyeballing this now. Trying to give it a reasonable amount of glue, and I am going to do this very edge. I probably should have done the gluing differently, but if I do another one I can show you what I should have done. As long as it glues, it doesn't really matter. Got ahead of myself then. I actually heard a car outside. I don't know if you could hear it on camera, but it kind of distracted me. And I'm just going to try and line up. So I'm just trying to line up my cut edge there. And just burnishing that down, taking away my excess. Okay, and then, so I have got a little bit of sticking, which is why I like to have it over the paper towel. Okay, and then just pulling that through. And I'm reburnishing it, the edges, because baking paper tends to not keep the creases in very well to start with. It kind of bounces back out onto itself. So I'm just reminding it where I want it to be, basically. Okay, and just adding some glue to my end. It's a little bit slow coming out, sorry. Okay. Okay. just burnishing that down again. Now, I don't normally embellish these. I haven't in the past. I like the fact that they have the tea staining, and that gives the eye something to play with when you first see it on the page. And then whatever journaling cards I pop inside, you can kind of see those through. So I'll show you. I have a couple of journaling cards here. Just going to take this paper out. Well, I'm hoping I can. Okay. So whatever journaling cards I have in there, you kind of get to see them peek through. It's almost looking through, like looking through a really dirty stained glass window, and I love that. So I don't tend to embellish these. You could, but I like them as they are. So I can quickly do one more for you. And I'm not pushing really hard on that. I'm going to set that aside to let it dry. And we will quickly score this one. So again, the long edge at 3/4. Just trying to get my fingers placed right. Okay, and then turning around and scoring at 2 inches. And you can see when I push on that, it pulls it across. So that's why I tend to pull it a little bit taut. And then again at 5 3/8. And I'm sorry if you can't see the measurements. So it's 5 3/8. Okay, so I'm cutting those pieces off. You can come in at a slight angle if you want to, just to allow some movement. And taking it at an angle on there to give us that little detail at the bottom of the pocket, where the edge is tapered. And again on this side, taking off where we've scored, and I will see if I can zoom in on this part so you can see where I'm cutting. And I do need to taper a little bit more. I'm just comparing to the other side. Okay, and I know rivers become mountains and mountains become valleys, but it's actually easier with this baking paper, so I'm not going to try that out. I did that with the first one and it was much harder to fold, so I'm folding against that theory. I just find it easier with the baking paper. I did struggle a little bit with that first one to get it to fold where I wanted it to fold, and I think that's why. Okay. So I'm just reminding it where I want it to fold once I glue. And you don't have to cut them either. You could just leave them like that and not put the decorative edge of the pinking shears on them. So, and just cutting my edges. And then with the pinking shears, this one's curling a little bit. So I am just taking the slightest bit off both ends. And done. So again, I'm going to pop this piece of paper towel in here. Okay, so when I glued, what I usually do, and what I didn't think of when I was doing it a moment ago, is I usually do both edges. So down this edge and across a little bit. And then down this edge, and I do have a little string there. Okay, and then I'm just going to pop a little bit further into the center, and then that should marry them up so that there's good coverage. And it kind of takes away having to guess where you need to stop. I'm just trying to line up my cut marks at the top. Okay. Trying to give it a really good burnish. Would like a little bit more glue under there. Don't ask me why that didn't work, because it usually, because the camera's on, that's why. Just want a little bit of extra glue under that flap to hold it in place. I know the first time I made these, I really wasn't sure if that glue would hold them. Being a baking paper and non-stick, but it hasn't let me down yet, touch wood. Just realizing that had moved slightly, so my glue hasn't set yet, that I was able to just shift that, which is great. Okay, and then I'm going to glue the bottom piece. I really hope you're in focus, because I don't think I checked that a minute ago when I changed the focus. I can't remember. I often wish that it was just an autofocus and it was that simple. I hate thinking that I'm letting you guys down. Okay. So just trying to start burnishing that down. Oh, and I do have some seepage. And this is about the point in the video where I start realizing that I'm getting it everywhere. Okay. And then we have our little glassine bag. Really fun, and I just love the colour that I get from reusing the baking paper that I have from my tea staining. So I hope you enjoyed this, everybody. They are lots of fun to have on hand. You can pump them through, you can make them as big or as small as you like, and have yourself a little supply of them ready to go when you need them. So happy crafting, everybody. I look forward to seeing you soon. Please give this video a thumbs up, like the video if you like what you see, and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more. And happy crafting, everybody. I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.